AWS Cloud Practitioner Certification, Security Section, User Permissions and Access. In AWS, the user access management is done by the service called Identity and Access Management, also known as IAM. In IAM, you can manage access by using users, groups, and roles, which we will talk about in this video. First, let's talk about the root user. When you first create an AWS account, you create it by using the root user. The root user has all the access to the services and resources of the AWS account. The most important thing to know is not to use the root user for daily tasks of the account. Instead, use the root user to create an admin user and use the admin user to create other users or perform daily tasks. The root user can be rarely used for things like changing the AWS account support plan. Also, make sure to protect your root user by using multi-factor authentication, which requires a code generated by a device such as your mobile phone. Next topic is IAM User. An IAM user is an identity that you create in AWS which represents a user. By default, IAM user does not have any permissions. You have to explicitly give the necessary permissions. When you grant permissions, make sure to grant permissions only to what they need. This is called the principle of least privilege. The next topic is IAM Policy. An IAM policy is a document that allows or denies permissions to AWS services and resources. When you grant permissions to an IAM user, it is done by attaching an IAM policy to a user. Next topic, IAM Group. An IAM group is a collection of IAM users. When you assign an IAM policy to a group, all the users in the group are granted permissions specified by the policy. IAM groups are used to manage IAM user permissions as a collection. For example, if a user transfers to a different department, we just need to unassign the user from the previous group and assign to the new group. But what if a user is not completely transferred to a new department, but temporarily switched to a different set of work? That's when we need IAM roles, which we are going to talk about next. An IAM role is an identity that a user can assume to gain temporary access to services or resources. At a time, a user can assume only one role. When a user assumes a role, they lose the permissions granted by the previous role.